I'd like to call this meeting to order.
Rachel. Present. Whalen.
Present.
Soldwich.
Present.
Bash.
Present.
And Hoover.
Present. Wonderful. We are all here. We would like to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the April 3rd agenda?
We voted the agenda for April 3rd.
Second that. Fantastic. So now that we have new business, so we've got the 2024 annual election of officers. Do you want to do that right now? A minute, so sorry about that. I'm jumping ahead on this one. Well, thank you, Lee. So we're gonna approve the meeting minutes for January 3rd of 2024. So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Got a first and a second. And we're on to new business. Here we go. So we have the 2024 annual election of officers. Ellie, what do you think here? How should we?
Yeah, this is one that we've been pushing off for a while on this, and now that we have a full board, and I know Deidre was here last time, but we didn't have everybody here, so we wanted to wait till we had everybody here to do that. But I'll leave the discussion up to you. Renee, obviously you were vice chair previously. Our previous chair, I don't know who lives in town, so is not here anymore. So nominations are up to the board, and
I don't mind remaining vice chair, but I am not as proficient as maybe someone else here at our table at being chair. Would anyone like to volunteer?
I think Lee would be a great chair.
There we go, Lee. Would you like to be?
No, but I will accept it, but
Okay.
don't ask me to like it.
Well, I make a motion that we nominate Lee Bash for Board of Adjustments Chair.
the nomination can include vice chair as well too.
And vice chair, I will remain Renee Soldich. I will remain. It's okay with everyone? I mean, it doesn't matter. Seriously.
Ready to vote, or we want to?
Need a second?
It's second, I second it.
Rachel.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Got it. Done.
So moved. Okay, that was easy and painless. All right, there we go.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. We all do.
Of course.
Well, whatever. I'm not the best at this, but I muddle through.
You've done well.
I muddle through, which I'm okay. Okay, so the new business, we would like to consider a request from Ted, is it pronounced Ions? Correct? Inns, perfect. On behalf of the Indianola Community School District for a special use permit for the expansion of a public high school located at 1304 East First Avenue. Do we need to hear from? Since I don't have anything else in front of me, I'm just kind of going by what I can find on my phone here.
We'll start with a staff presentation
Yeah, staff
from Emily,
presentation.
and then we'll go from there.
So Ted Inns, on behalf of the school district, has submitted a special use permit application for 1304 East First Avenue. If approved, the request would allow for various site improvements to the high school campus. So the following shows an overview of the proposed site plan for the site at 1304 East First Avenue. The use is currently established as a public high school and is permitted within the zoning district under a special use permit. The project will be phased, so we'll just go through the phases as part of like the site plan. So starting with phase 1A, the proposal shows the construction of a new academic wing north of the existing building. So that's going to be the structure here with a landscaped courtyard. That's within this inner area. The shown area also shows a proposed northern parking lot that is needed for faculty and staff parking. So that's in this area here. The parking areas show ADA accessible parking stalls. Here, those all have demarcated ADA paths to the building as is required by code. Parking areas also have landscape parking islands that are required by code. So those are shown here. A bus drop off and pickup loading zone is shown as well, within here. And those also have, provisions for ADA accessibility as well, to the site. They are showing existing stormwater detention basin that will be upsized on this area here, so west of the proposed academic wing. Moving on to proposed parking lot 1, this is also included within phase 1A of the project. And then continuing on, a proposed building addition is shown to the northeast side of the building. There is a ADA accessible path to the tennis court around here. Moving on to phase 1B of the project, this shows construction of a proposed administrative suite right here on the south end of the existing building. There is a proposed parent drop-off and pickup loading zone here. Those also have provisions for ADA accessibility for the loading zone. The applicant has conducted a Q analysis that was submitted to the Public Works Director as it relates to queuing on the site as users are entering and exiting the site. They've also submitted a traffic impact analysis as well that's been reviewed, and any improvements associated with that would be required as part of the project. There is visitor parking area here with limited parking, and there are ADA accessible paths here. Those are all demarcated and then secures a pathway to the building. And then they are also showing bicycle parking as is required by code here too. There is a phase 2 of the project, but that phase 2 is outside of the scope of this review. So they'll have to come back to Board of Adjustment for phase 2 when it's time when all of phase 1A and 1B is complete. But that includes construction of a new east parking lot area, construction of a new competition gym, and then it's just a few new tennis courts. And then they do show alternatives for the site with 2 additional tennis courts and then alternative parking areas as well. So this just overviews the phasing plan that's all included in the agenda packet. Phase 1A is proposed to be completed or should be substantially completed in April of 2026. 1B is anticipated to be complete in February 2027. This shows an overall of the architectural elevations for the site. The applicants are using a mix of materials that includes glass, metal fascia, and precast panel. And then they are screening rooftop mounted equipment as part of the project as is required. In order to approve of the special use permit application, the application must be favorable to 7 findings of fact. Staff's analyses to these findings of facts are included in the staff report. And then for this, we are recommending approval with conditions. Those conditions being the first one, landscaping associated with phase 1A and 1B of the proposal must be provided with phase 2 or prior to August 2029. And that's just to ensure any of the landscaping that they're doing right now is complete when the overall project is done. The second is should pending variance requests be denied by the Board of Adjustment. So there's 2 variance applications that are associated with those. So this condition just speaks to that, whether or not they're approved or denied. But with that, the applicant must provide updated documentation and information to the Community Development Department showing consistency and compliance with the City of Indianola zoning code based off of the decisions on those tonight. And then an updating landscaping plan and site plan addressing the second 2024 review comments as it relates to landscaping requirements and accessible routes to facilities on site must be provided. I believe this has been provided, it just hasn't been reviewed yet. And then any areas of issues or concerns with the stormwater management plan and site drainage must be addressed prior to start of construction. If there's any questions or comments from the board for staff, we would be able to answer those.
I just have a general question on the timing. Since we all knew this was coming about and there was a school bond issue and all of this had been approved, isn't it, it seems unique to me as a taxpayer that it wouldn't already have passed the Board of Adjustments for since they've gone through all the expenses to do that, why is it, it seems a little after the fact.
So when you get into a lot of public projects, I know a lot of money isn't spent on the full details of engineered drawings and all that stuff until they're assured that the bond referendum passed. At that point in time, we then really were engaging with the engineering team and the architects to go through this from a staff level. We've probably been reviewing this, for what, 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. We did not get the full submittal from the school district and the architect team till about a month ago, I think, but just knowing the project and knowing what was going on, we kind of been preliminary reviewing a lot of this stuff ahead of the application.
It just seems for the ones we're looking at, a setback and just plain special use permit, those would have been, because I hate for this board, I mean, the board could come back and not approve it, but then it's like, I don't know, it just seems like the cart is after the,
I definitely get that.
however that goes.
I definitely get that impression, but it's, I can relate a little bit to some of the stuff that we're doing even on the city hall, potential city hall project is, we really need to wait till we get to a bond referendum and we're assured that, we are going to be able to go forward with the project before we really start spending a lot of that money to get those full detailed plans. So
It just seems.
yeah, I definitely get the impression.
Mhm.
And to her point, if, for instance, we don't follow the recommendation and insist on some other modifications as well, does that have financial implications?
Most likely, yeah.
And so it feels, I agree with you, it's the cart before the horse, and it feels a little circular about the whole thing.
Yeah, you're dealing with bond referendums and stuff like that, and maybe there isn't the best path forward on some of this stuff. It's just, there's a lot of key milestones on projects like this that have to be hit, and sometimes it doesn't make too much sense, but
This would be like, the first one, that would be like a first key milestone, in my opinion, but anyway, that's just my question. I just didn't understand. And what about if we come back with on the stormwater, there's a big change in the stormwater. I saw the response and back and forth and
100%. So
part of it is the storm sewer that's available to them.
yeah, so we don't foresee that. So I can assure you from staff standpoint, if we thought there was going to be a big change on anything like that, we wouldn't even be bringing it forward. We're really down into the details of a few minor things and a few corrections of numbers and stuff on the stormwater management plan at this point. So I don't foresee that happening. Ultimately, if something big did happen, we're most likely going to have to come back to the board and let you know that there's been change to the original approval.
Any remarks or questions from the public that are here? Anyone here to represent at all, or are we?
Just here to answer any questions you guys may have, on engaging the parts of engineering, sort of civil, site design representative. I know Zach, who's on the line, would be the architectural representative. I guess just to kind of go with what Charlie was
Up
saying.
to the podium and your smiling face. There we go.
So I guess the only input I have from the special use portion is that a lot of what we're being required to submit takes a lot of correspondence amongst us, the city, the entire team, and to dot all the i's and cross all the t's to answer everything without having to come back to you guys with changes here and there. I mean, ideally, we're applying for what is then going to be permitted. At that point, we can't really change anything without submitting it back. And so like, if we did go way early, I mean, it's also an existing site, so it is a school, so it in theory fits within the special use, so that's all I have on that subject. But if you guys have any specific questions, I can certainly answer anything.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. So would we be?
I move that we approve with the conditions stated, the Indianola Community School District special use permit for the expansion of the high school.
Second.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Whalen,
Yes.
Goldwitch,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes.
and Hoover.
Yes. Passed, there we go. And so then, okay, so silly question here, Charlie, did that take care of 5B or 5B and C?
So we need to do C and D, those are the
C and
two
D,
separate
okay.
requests on it, so. Site plan was kind of step one, and these are
Step one,
step
step
two and
two.
three. Yep.
All right, so we would like to consider a request from Ted, and I can't pronounce it again, to vary from the 30-foot minimum parking setback from the front property lines by 15 feet or a front parking setback of 15 feet. Would we have the information there and give us some?
Yep, so Ted Inns on behalf of the school district has submitted a variance request for the high school campus to vary from the required 30-foot minimum for front parking setback by 15 feet for a minimum front parking setback of 15 feet. The following is an exhibit that the applicant has provided for this variance request. The attached shows the existing parking condition in red, and then the black is the proposed. The existing condition is currently legally non-conforming for the site as the condition pre-existed zoning codes relevant to parking lot setbacks. In this particular area, the applicant is showing a setback of approximately 18.5 feet from the property line. And then in this area, they're showing approximately 26 feet. And these are parking lots 4 and 6.
Is this permanent parking lot or, excuse me, may I just ask, is that permanent parking lot or the temporary parking lot?
That will all be paved and all sorts of good stuff.
So those shows the current code requirements for parking lot setbacks. The highlighted is the zoning districts that the overall site is within. So they're within the R1, R2, and the zoning district. They're specifically requesting the variance as it relates to the R1 and R2 zoning district, which differs from the C2 zoning district. That one requires a 15-foot setback for the parking lots, and R1 and R2 requires a minimum of 30 feet. So this would match the other areas of the site that are zoned C2.
Would you back up to the picture again and show me where the R1 and R2 is?
So C2 is going to be this area here, and then the remaining are R1 and R2. So R1 is here, and then R2 is further.
Perspective is southwest.
So 12.
See, I think circling, but give me a street address or a street that we're on.
The old administration building, you know, where that
Yep.
building, I don't know if it's still there or not, honestly.
It is.
Okay, so when you look at the southern half of that property there is zone C2. So that's that property right there, where that parking lot is.
That's the old
Yep.
administration building.
Yeah,
Got it.
correct. And then the R2 portion is just a small stretch where there used to be old residential structures right at the corner of South 9th and East First.
Oh, okay. And where's R1?
R1's everything else.
The school is sitting on R1?
Yes.
Oh.
So going through the findings of fact, which all must be found favorably by the Board of Adjustment in order for a variance request to be approved. The first finding of fact asks whether special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land that aren't applicable to other like zone properties. With this property, it's unique as compared to other properties within these zoning districts due to the established use, the level of service, as well as traffic volumes, especially at peak times and users that use the site. So with that, staff does find that this criteria is met. The second asks if a right would be deprived, if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. The established use generates a number of daily users that are atypical from other developments within the R1, R2, and C2 zoning districts. If denied, the applicant would be denied adequate parking and traffic circulation on the site to fit the use. So with that, staff finds that this criteria could be met. The third asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. While the site was developed by the property owner back in 1965, and has since had subsequent additions and alterations made to the campus, staff does not find that the actions of the applicant is self-imposed due to many of the developed property pre-existing current zoning codes. So with that, staff does find that this criteria is met. And then the last asks if a special privilege would be granted to the applicant that is otherwise denied to other lands, structures, or buildings within the same zoning district. Staff does find that if a variance request were to be denied, that a hardship could occur or a common right privilege to the property owner would be denied and would result in the property owner being disenfranchised due to those unique circumstances. Some points to consider. These are all provided within the agenda packet, but the first one is that the variance request is favorable to all of the findings of fact. The property is also unique due to the characteristics of the site and established use. Granting the variance would not provide a right or privilege that other properties do not have. The property owner may be disenfranchised to adequate parking on the site and safe accessible routes to the campus. And then lastly, a hardship could exist if the request is denied. That they would not be able to make reasonable economical use of the land. So staff is recommending approval of the variance request as submitted. And if there's any questions.
The school of just have said, we ask that all school property be changed from R1 and 2 to C1,
Yeah, that could have been one better.
and that would have solved it all right there. And then it'd been all within the criteria of the 15 feet.
It's been pretty easy.
Well, and I don't want to say, I'll, not necessarily an easy process. So rezoning property is a very lengthy process. There's a lot of things that go into it. And there's a lot of criteria that we have to look on. On this one in particular, being adjacent to a highway corridor, it's probably going to be looked upon pretty favorable, but it does also push a lot of commercial zoning north into that neighborhood up there as well. Not that the high school is ever going to go anywhere else, but one of the things we always have to consider when looking at a rezoning is if, you know, the high school were to go away and all of a sudden it was gonna be sold to somebody else, and then you could have, you know, a plethora of commercial uses going in there in the future. So, you know, one of the things that we'd have to look at, so I don't know if that's necessarily the best path forward on that, but certainly a path forward.
Any questions or concerns from the public that would like to be addressed? Anything from you, Ted, would like to submit with this presentation? No.
I move the City of Indianola Board of Adjustment approves the variance request as submitted.
I second that.
Goldwich,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes.
Hoover,
Yes.
Whalen,
Yes.
and Mitchell.
Pass. Yeah. Okay. The next on the agenda is to consider request from Ted Inns to vary from trash enclosure requirements. What do we have from?
So Ted Inns, on behalf of the school district, has submitted a variance request for the high school campus to vary from trash enclosure requirements. So the following shows the proposed site plan that was a part of the special use permit application. And then this highlighted area shows where proposed waste collection containers would be located on the site. Some overview of relevant code sections as it relates to this variance request. We're going to break it down into 3 different areas. So the first, that code section outlines that any waste containers, including receptacles, dumpsters, grease collection containers, all of that has to be opaquely screened with a permanent enclosure. That permanent enclosure has to have gates for disposal truck access. This essentially outlines that all properties that are developed, commercial, industrial, or other intensive uses, those are required to have collection containers that are enclosed. The second outlines the design requirements for the trash enclosures. Specifically, trash enclosures must be constructed of permanent materials. That includes materials such as textured blocks, split-faced concrete block, brick, or stone. And then those colors must be compatible with the dominant architectural materials of the building on site and be integral to the building. And then the last requirement is that the enclosure be placed out of public view and constructed to visibly screen the views from adjoining properties. This requirement essentially means placing the enclosure within the rear yard areas where it isn't visible from the street, and then ensuring that neighboring properties don't have visibility to it. Going through the findings of fact, all of these have to be found favorably by the Board of Adjustment in order for a request to be approved. First asks on special conditions and circumstances. Generally, with the code, it requires that waste collection enclosures be placed out of public view, and the enclosure is required regardless of whether siting is out of view or not. These codes can be for aesthetic related reasons, but they're also in place for public health and wellness reasons. Just to prevent and minimize unwanted pests and rodents, as well as ensuring that trash is properly contained within the enclosure, minimizing waste from traveling that could be carried by weather-related events. And then it's also there to ensure that containers are not moved around on the property. With this site specifically, it's especially important because where the dumpster containers are going to be placed, they'll be along an access route that's there for fire access in the event of emergencies. And so we wouldn't want those collection containers to be moved around and block those pathways. So with that, staff cannot find that this finding of fact is met, considering that there's no special conditions or circumstances that exist that are particularly unique or particular to this land as it relates to the trash enclosures.
Before you go, can I jump in? Before you go, can you go back to your picture?
Yeah.
Because it's, as I understand from the documentation, it's on the back side of the school. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in this area, so like the north side of the school, between the tennis courts and the school.
Okay. Is that where it is today?
No, it's currently, you can't see it on this photo,
Okay.
but it's near the like home plate of the softball field on the other side of the drive, closer to the
Yeah.
building.
Yep, I know where it is. You're right. And so before you go through all the criteria, what is the schools asking to do?
Do not have the enclosure around.
Not have the enclosure. Got it. Okay.
And then while it's up, this is that access route that.
That's the access route you're talking about. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Oh, step more criteria.
I can get back to the picture,
because I was confused about that.
Okay, keep rolling.
So the second one asks if there would be a right that's deprived of the property owner that's commonly enjoyed by other properties. With this, all properties, whether it's new or being redeveloped, would require a trash enclosure to be constructed. So if this request were to be approved, it would cause an imbalance of rights where other properties are required to do it and this particular property isn't. So with that, staff doesn't find that this criteria is met. The third asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. As briefly mentioned, the strict application of the code requirement would not constitute as a hardship on the applicant, but it's also an inconvenience just because they don't want to do it. The property owner can still make reasonable and economic viable use of their property if they're required to conform to the zoning code requirements. So with that, staff doesn't find that this finding of fact could be met. And then the last one refers to whether a special privilege would be granted. Going back to the second finding of fact, staff doesn't find that they would either be disenfranchised if this was denied. Likewise, if it was approved, it would still create that imbalance of property rights as it relates to the construction of a trash enclosure. Some points to consider with this request: the variance request is not favorable towards one or more findings of fact outlined in the zoning code. The variance is not created by regulations and arises from an action or desire of the applicant to omit construction of a trash enclosure. While visibility from adjacent properties and public road right-of-way would be limited, trash enclosures serve to contain trash and waste receptacles in a consolidated area to prevent encroachment onto circulatory routes such as adjacent access drive and fire lane. But then they also serve as a preventative measure for rodents and pests, especially for facilities that may encounter greater amounts of food-related waste. As such, approval of the variance could adversely affect the order, convenience, and or general welfare. And granting the variance would provide a right and privilege that other properties do not have. And then the last 2 points, an unnecessary hardship wouldn't exist for the property owner if denied. And deviation from the zoning code regulations would not be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning code, which is to protect the public health and welfare within the city of Indianola. So with that, staff is recommending denial of the variance request.
In the spirit of what you just presented, I'm disappointed that they've even asked for this. I just want to say that. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a very positive thing on their behalf. It's like they're trying to get away with something. It's pretty extreme to my mind. I mean, it's not going to change anything other than I would have hoped that in the spirit of being a member of the community and trying to behave in a responsible way, that they wouldn't have brought this to us in the first place. That's my own observation.
There should have been sides, like the garbage container should be within a walled area and covered up.
Yes, that they would have embraced that notion and said, well, if that's what we have to do, without bringing it to us.
You know why?
Yeah.
They
I'll be defer to the applicant on that one.
It's not part of the
space.
plan and,
Right.
yeah, is there a reason?
I'm a little less in tune with this request. I don't know if Zach is able to speak on behalf of this from virtually or not. It's possible.
Zach, you can go ahead and speak.
Take it off mute.
He's he unmuted, but there's no audio coming from his mic.
I can speak for Zach. It mostly was speaking to the point of that it's screened from the building on one half. From that aerial and perhaps his elevation views, which I don't know if you guys have included. So on the backside where the white space is between the building and the drive being the dark color, that's actually like a 4-foot tall loading dock. So it's essentially acting as a top loading dumpster system in a way. So it's, you could reason it's technically screened on 2 sides from there, and visibly, there's tree line on the north and east side. So visibly screening it for all intents and purposes of that. And I think that was mostly the reasoning behind this.
If you're at a high school with kids, I would think you'd want signs on it at a gate.
Are you able to hear me now?
Just to keep kids out of
Yeah,
it.
we can hear you, Zach.
Okay. Regarding the gate, there is a gate to the north west near the tennis courts to keep people out and also to close off that fire lane. Regarding the trash enclosure, the reason we chose to take it to a variance was due to the actual programming of the building itself. There's a school district commercial kitchen, so that is also a receiving dock. And it was made to accommodate the staff so that they would not have to haul trash across the site and risk trash flying out. Having it right off of the loading dock allows them to put the trash directly into the dumpster without bringing it all around the site and having unsightly things blow out of their hands or cause hardship on the staff. We also recognize that the trees to the north and to the east provide some screening, as well as the building itself. To the point of the other usage types, this is specific to a school district, as the amount of children that they are serving requires quite a large amount of dumpsters. And they have a lot of receiving and a lot of waste to get rid of. And the last point, the fire lane is also serving as the vehicle access for the dumpsters as well, and to allow turn radius, etc., to pick up those dumpsters. Putting it in another location would either reduce parking, be more visible, or be quite a bit of additional dollars to the district. That would impact the amount of classrooms or facility use that they would be able to get with the dollars that were passed from the bond.
So a question, are the dumpsters just sitting out there in the open, or are they within brick walls on either side of them, or anything?
So on the back side of the dumpsters would be a 4-foot. So you would essentially walk out, and at your feet, the top of the dumpster would sit.
And what about the front of the dumpsters?
Excuse me?
The front side of the dumpster is visible to all?
The front side of the dumpsters would be visible only to the tennis courts. They're screened completely from adjacent properties.
Right, so you go to a tennis match, you're staring at the dumpsters. And you have kids at the tennis match, they could get into the dumpsters, right?
We could provide locks on the dumpsters if that was desired.
Okay, and any other comments from the staff or from Ted, public? Questions?
So can you put something like a gate in front, like use the loading dock as the back structure, like use the building for the 3 sides that you're wanting, but put something in front? Or does it have to be completely closed?
Yeah, so it would count, like if they had the loading dock as one wall, like that would count. They would just need to enclose the remaining 3 sides for the trash enclosure.
I mean, I have 2 kids in high school right now and I know what they do back there. Like, I yell at them, tell them to stay out of things. Like, kids are kids. You can't, and leaving that open, they're little kids. Everybody's going to be playing around in them, doing things, especially during a tennis match. I don't want to leave it completely open or the public can see it. That's just my thoughts.
Would all of the dumpsters need to be moved in order to enclose the other 3 sides?
Anything that we would say about that right now would be a little bit speculative. However, in order to enclose the 3, we would definitely be taking away from the service and fire lane in their current location.
Thank you.
My only comment on having doors is if you forget to close the doors, you have the same situation where as had the dumpsters not been placed back in the original spot, which is they'd be blocking, so. You know,
What was your first part of that?
if you have doors on the front, they still have to swing, and I believe those doors or those. Oh, I think those dumpsters, when you include space between them, ends up being about 20 feet, so you'd be looking at least 2 10-foot swing gates. to get in there, plus maybe if you have your feet on each side, so
But they're gonna swing open when they're emptying the garbage and then they're swung back.
presumably, assuming that the whole operation is done correct.
I mean, yeah.
So.
That'd be better than being open all the time.
Probably ram it with my fire truck before getting it.
If it's a fire truck, yeah.
Yeah.
If that's the issue.
Okay, are we ready to make a motion? Or any other questions prior to?
I move that the City of Indianola Board of Adjustment denies the variance request.
I second that.
Which?
Agree to deny, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
Agree to deny.
Ash,
Yes.
Hoover. Mitchell
Yes.
and Wayland.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I think they can come back to us with a solution. And I think we make it clear that we want them to do.
Yeah, with a better plan.
Mhm.
Agreed. Okay, so we are to now consider a request from Paul Horton for a special,
No,
no, are we not there yet?
we're 5E.
That's where I'm at.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Pardon me.
I mean, I'm going, I'm okay, I'm messing.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm sorry.
Consider a request from Paul Horton for a special use permit for new construction of a building associated with a place of worship located at 1209 West Second Avenue. We have staff report.
Paul Horton, on behalf of Indianola Regular Baptist Church, has submitted a special use permit application for 1209 West Second Avenue. If approved, the request would permit the construction of a 38 by 72 building. The structure is proposed for storage of items associated with the established use on site. This shows the proposed site plan for that project. This is that proposed building. They're putting it on the existing gravel lot that's on the property. And then this shows the proposed building. This facade here would be the primary facade for the structure, so that would require the minimum building material requirements. It's not shown on this specific document, but so they're required to have a minimum of 3 different class 1 or class 2 materials. It does count if you have different bricks. So sometimes with new construction, you'll have one brick color, and then like around the sides, you'll have a different color of brick that contrasts. So that does count for a second material, and then they have some glass on that as well. So staff's analyses to the findings of fact, those are included in the staff report. With this request, we are approving the request we approved as submitted. If there's any questions, I mean, the applicants are here today too, so.
That's always have a question. Because, and I believe, and I know the lot's big enough, there's no doubt about that. And yes, it's a church today, so if it's a church in the future, but the size of the building compared to other buildings that we have inside Indianola, this is way past the backs, is it not?
so when we're looking at accessory building sizing, we do have limitations on that. With this being a church, though, it is not considered to be an accessory building. It's part of the primary use on commercial churches, schools, things like that. All technically are not accessory buildings, so they come under the primary building category.
So what would happen if they decide to build another church that's 3 times as large someplace else, and they go to sell that land, then what does it become?
That's a great question.
The building with the great big lot?
Yeah, it really depends, like, that's what the use going in there would be. I mean, if it were to convert to some sort of residential use and all the zoning.
Also, you build a zoning new house there.
Yeah, so.
For the extra building.
Yeah, we definitely have to take a look at that and go through the whole process and figure out how we get that to meet zoning. So,
Could it be done after the fact? That was my only concern is I have a concept of the size of the building and it's big.
it would be difficult, yeah, it would be difficult to convert that, I think, to a residential property.
that would be
without
my-
structure.
I mean, the lot's big enough, there's no doubt about it. However, it said folding chairs, you guys must have a lot of tables and. But I understand it's other things.
Paul, was there anything that you would, are you here, Paul?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add to this today?
No, I don't think so. I think they've covered it pretty well.
No, okay. Any questions or comments from the public?
I'm just curious, how many feet, if you know, from the church to the building?
20 feet.
20 feet?
Yeah. It's 92 feet from behind that. Right there, there's a 20-foot space between them. So it'll be 92 feet total to the back south side.
Would you like to come up to the podiums and present your questions?
I was wondering, is it going to run the width or the length?
It's exactly the same width as the church. There's a bump out on the back side of the church is 38 feet wide and that new building's proposed to be that also.
And from the drawing, there's an existing concrete, right?
Slab, yes.
And that slab that's there, and it's gonna really be sitting on that, correct?
It's in that proposed building is in
Oh,
the
it's on gravel, right.
gravel portion.
There's that concrete piece that goes all the way back there in that turnaround.
Yes,
That's gonna be
yes,
on the other
that-
side of it.
Any other questions from the public for
Truly.
the staff or for Paul? Okay, we're ready to make a motion.
Nobody else had any?
Board of the Indianola Board Adjustment approves the special use request as submitted.
I second.
Brett,
Ash,
Yes.
Which,
Yes.
Wayland,
Yes.
Mitchell.
yes.
Approved. Okay, thank you for coming, everyone, and getting your questions out there. And now we have some Board of Adjustments training. Do we, yeah, if they want to,
More than welcome to stay.
yeah, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you would like to head on out, you most certainly can.
No, it'll be there.
It's their right to do it if you want to.
It's gonna be a battle.
I don't think we're forward to the rest. Let's do it. And just really quick, while we're waiting for them to kind of filter out, so Emily's done a great job of starting to put together some of the training series that we want to give. To all of the boards and commissions that we're responsible for, just to kind of keep everything fresh in everybody's mind on responsibility and things like that, so. I'll let Emily give the presentation here, but answer any questions at the end.
We'll just go ahead and get started. This is just an overview of our now. So I'm the associate planner, so I'm responsible for application intake, pre-screening applications to ensure everything. Part of an application, responding to planning inquiries, as well as processing and reviewing land use applications. Tim is our building official. He reviews permit applications for new constructions, alterations, additions, as well as conduct inspections to ensure that the built environment is safe and accessible. Mike is our code enforcement officer. He inspects rental housing as well as ensures properties continue to comply with land use and zoning ordinances as it relates to health, housing, sign code, building code, fire code, etc. just to protect public health, safety, and welfare in the community. And then Miranda's our administrative assistant, that supports every aspect of the work that we do in our department, maintaining the interface between the public and the department. And that includes organizing and supporting public meetings, hearings, publishing monthly, quarterly reports, and record management. And then Charlie's our department director. So our department provides staff support to 3 different boards and commissions. That includes the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and the Downtown Square Commission. These boards and commissions comprise of volunteers that dedicate their personal time to provide input on policies which shape our government and community. The Planning and Zoning Commission and Downtown Square Commission serve as an independent advisory commission to the City Council. So for their review processes, they're typically giving recommendations to the City Council, which is different to the Board of Adjustment, where your actions here are ultimate decisions that adjudicate the special use permits that you see or the variance requests. So highlighting each of them. P&Z is responsible for making decisions and recommendations regarding the development of the community. So they will recommend action to be taken on case applications such as site plans, division of land, or changes in land use. The commission also provides recommendation on zoning ordinance adoption and amendments, as well as help prepare long-term planning and visioning plans. The Board of Adjustment is tasked with upholding the integrity of the zoning code and the Elevate Indianola Comprehensive Plan as it relates to applications for special use permits and variances. And on occasion, they'll hear the appeals concerning decisions and interpretations made by community development staff. And then the Downtown Square Commission is trusted with ensuring a vibrant and flourishing downtown center. The commission will review special event applications, right-of-way leases, sidewalk use agreements as they relate to the downtown square. And when there's funding, they're also the reviewing body for the downtown facade and interior improvement grant program. There are a number of other boards and commissions.
I apologize. Another meeting at 7. Thank you.
So this includes Parks and Recreation, Hometown Pride, Indianola Public Arts, and Sustainability. We don't provide direct staff support to those departments, but at times there are responsibilities and reviews that overlap with each other with these departments. So going on to the comprehensive plan, this is the community's visual guide to future planning. It includes long-range planning policy to guide decisions about the development of a community. The comp plan includes an implementation matrix, which consists of strategies and action items to help bring the community's vision to life. And it also includes a future land use map, which describes the desired types, intensities, and spatial arrangements for each land use in order to achieve a vision described in that plan. So this just overviews the future land use map. This is really key to determining future decisions about zoning, development, and infrastructure investments in the community. It's different from a zoning map. A zoning map is a locally adopted law that will prescribe a property owner with property rights based off of the zoning district that they're in. The comprehensive plan also outlines what each land use designation may include or be compatible with, or what the ideal density of the land should be. So for example, for low density residential, it outlines 2 to 5 dwelling units per gross acre, items like that. And then in addition to the comp plan, we also have other long range planning documents or policies that guide the city. That includes the city square master plan, the recommendations that are within that, the community wayfinding signage plan, as well as some others that we have. The community development department, as well as the boards and commissions that we provide staff support with review several development cases. So we'll just briefly go over each of them. A land use change request is submitted for any changes in land zoning, whether that's the designated future land use for that area or the overlying or underlying zoning of the property. And sometimes it's both concurrently. A site development application is submitted for both construction documents and site plans. A site plan is required for any new development projects, so new uses, buildings, structures, conversions, or changes of uses, or any changes and modifications to building facades or relating additions and accessory structures. They can be either major or minor based off of the scope of the work. Minor site plans don't get reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Those are reviewed administratively by the department. Land division requests are submitted to divide, alter, or adjust property. So whether that's just the legal description of the property or if they're dividing it out to create buildable lots, this is the type of application that we'll get. And then with state code, cities are required to review division requests that occur within 2 miles of city limits. So at times we'll also see items that are outside of the city of Indianola. A vacation request allows for publicly owned property such as an alleyway, easement, or street to be reverted back to private ownership or authority. Typically, these requests are approved when the maintenance is no longer justified at the public's expense, and when no adjacent property owners would be denied reasonable access to their properties. And then moving on to items that the Board of Adjustment reviews. So the BOA reviews variance requests and allows for reasonable deviation from the code requirements when there's an unusual hardship that exists for the property. It's meant to restore property rights that other similar properties typically have, but the property can't enjoy because of physical limitations or something that is precluding them from having that right. Variances can't give special privileges that other properties don't have. The BOA can't approve of land uses that are otherwise prohibited with the zoning district. So if someone came here to request a use that is just outright prohibited within the city, that wouldn't be something that the BOA could approve. These cases require written findings of fact. So that's what these forms are here that get signed after these hearings. But those findings of fact are legal documents that just prove or don't prove in some cases whether an unusual hardship for the property owner existed and supports the decision of the Board of Adjustment. So with these, if anyone were to appeal, it could be taken to local court or higher, and these forms actually go to those. And they review those findings of facts and all of those points that are considered as part of that meeting for those appeal requests. A special use permit is also reviewed by the board. This type of permit is required for types of uses which may require special or additional review by the city because of the potential effects of it that it might have on the community is sensitive in nature or more intense than other uses that are allowed outright. So for example, last year, the Board of Adjustment reviewed a large-scale solar panel site that required a special use permit prior to its development. This outlines generally the case review timeline. So typically not so much with Board of Adjustment requests, but for those that we have with the Planning and Zoning Commission, there'll be like a conceptual planning with the applicant. So they'll come in, they'll explain what they're proposing, and we'll provide them with what the code requirements are, local, state, and federal. From there, when they're ready, they'll submit the application. That application, will get reviewed just to make sure everything that is needed as part of that application is submitted and then gets sent on to the development review team. That consists of our department, utilities, parks and recreation, public works, water resource recovery. There's a lot of different departments that are included within that review process, but they'll review for, again, any of those city codes, state, federal that relates to the site. And sometimes we'll send review comments back to the applicant. Those are items that they will have to address. If they don't address it, they might request a variance or a waiver of some sort. From there, once all the information is provided, it can be taken to the board or commission for review. So with BOA, that step would end here. It wouldn't go on to city council. For planning and zoning, they give recommendations. So it would have one more step, additional meetings after that. And for P&Z, once it's once they give their recommendation, it goes to city council for their final review and decision. So just going over some planning concepts. So sometimes within meetings, you'll hear about non-conforming uses and, or in other terms, some people call it grandfathering or pre-existing conditions. That just refers to property or uses that don't conform to current regulations and ordinances. They may have at one point, but they don't because codes have changed or something has changed since it was originally adopted. So for example, the house on the right has a legal nonconformity. The setback on the site, and just 1 second, exceeds what the setback to the front property line is. What it's called for out in the code. If the property owner submitted a building permit to extend the house further into the setback, it would actually increase its nonconformity, and we would, as staff, would recommend denial of the approval or denial of the permit for that because it would increase the level of nonconformity for that site. If the property owner were to build a second story on the site, because it wouldn't increase that it wouldn't encroach further into that setback, it actually wouldn't increase the nonconformity. So as staff, we can approve of a building permit for that. Moving on to spot zoning, this refers to zoning decisions that result in a single parcel or small island of property with a different use from the surrounding property and is illegal. You won't see this in Board of Adjustment, so we'll just touch base on it. But for example, if this is a residential neighborhood and someone proposed to rezone one property to the C2 commercial, it just wouldn't be in line with what the adjacent properties are. So as staff, we would recommend denial of a rezoning request for that to the planning and zoning. If they approved of a request like that, it could be appealed to court to redact that decision. So with that, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. Thanks.
Okay, so we have the annual report. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's just included in the packet. If there are any questions, Charlie and I would be happy to answer those.
Okay, I think that's really it tonight, right? Are we missing anything?
I think the only thing we had left on the agenda was just the training that was put out there. I think you're attending great. I know everybody else has been here a little bit longer. It's always a good refresher to do, but you know, if anybody does want to attend, just let us know and we'll get you signed up.
So with that all being said and done, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. We all good?
Yeah, I think we are.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Looking through this packet
Yeah.
and seeing planning and zoning